The strange invitation. The colony on Vex 47 was quiet that evening. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. Captain Jake Carter, a former soldier turned colony leader, sat in his small quarters, sipping a cup of bitter space-grown coffee. Life on the colony was tough, but humans were survivors. They always found a way. A sudden knock on his door made him frown. Hardly anyone visited this late. When he opened the door, a strange-looking alien stood outside. She was short and hunched, with greenish skin that shimmered under the dim light. Her wrinkled face had kind eyes, but something about her felt ancient, powerful. "Captain Carter," the alien woman said, her voice soft but firm. "I am Granny Zilka. I have come to invite you for tea and cookies." Jake blinked. Cookies? On an alien planet? This had to be some kind of joke. But before he could refuse, Granny Zilka lifted a small wooden box and opened it. A warm, sweet smell drifted out. A smell that reminded him of home, of Earth, of his childhood. Something inside him whispered, "Say yes." I don't usually accept random invitations from aliens," Jake said cautiously. Granny Zilka chuckled. "Oh dear, these are not just any cookies. They are special. And I only invite those who are worthy." That word sent a chill down Jake's spine. Worthy? Worthy of what? Before he could ask, she placed a single cookie in his hand. "Take a bite. If you feel nothing, you may walk away." Jake glanced at the cookie. It looked ordinary, golden brown, with little dark specks that definitely weren't chocolate chips. He hesitated, then took a small bite. The moment the cookie touched his tongue, his mind exploded. Voices in the dark. Jake stumbled back, gripping his head. A strange buzzing noise filled his ears, growing louder by the second. Then suddenly, it became clear voices. He could hear thoughts. Not just his own, but thousands of them. Some were human, some alien, some from creatures he had never even seen. Their thoughts raced through his mind like a storm. Fear, joy, anger, hope. He felt it all. What is this?" he gasped, dropping the half-eaten cookie. Granny Zilka's eyes twinkled. "You have been chosen, Captain Carter. Your journey begins now." The gathering. Jake sat at a small wooden table in Granny Zilka's home. It was a strange mix of ancient and futuristic. The walls were made of dark, polished stone, but floating holograms displayed moving symbols. Candles flickered, but the ceiling glowed with soft blue light. It was a place out of time. Around the table sat 4 others. Dr. Amelia Rowe, the colony's lead scientist, a woman always searching for answers. Sergeant David Knox, a tough soldier who trusted no one. Leo Park, a mechanic with a sharp mind and even sharper sarcasm. Mira, a young woman who had arrived on the colony just weeks ago, mysterious and quiet. Each of them had a half-eaten cookie in front of them. They had all experienced something strange. Granny Zilka poured them a deep purple tea. "Drink," she said simply. Amelia frowned. "What's in this?" Granny Zilka smiled, understanding. Knox grumbled but took a sip. His eyes widened in shock. "It's like I just remembered something I never knew." Leo took a cautious sip. "What the hell does that even mean?" Granny Zilka folded her hands. "You humans are special. You are different from all others in the galaxy. Strong, resilient, unpredictable. And now, you have been given a gift, a power that will help you face what is coming." Mira, who had been silent, finally spoke. "And what exactly is coming?" Granny Zilka's smile faded. "Something terrible." The warning. Before they could ask more, a loud alarm echoed through the colony. Jake shot to his feet, pressing his communicator. "Control, what's going on?" A panicked voice responded. "Unknown ships detected. They're heading straight for us." Jake's gut twisted. "How many?" "Too many." A low humming filled the air. Outside, the sky darkened as massive ships began descending. The colony's defense cannons powered up. But Jake knew they weren't ready for this. Granny Zilka stood, her eyes glowing faintly. It has begun. Jake turned to her. Who are they? What do they want? Granny Zilka sighed. They want me. And now, they know you are with me. The others stared at her in shock. Knox pulled out his rifle. Well, isn't that just great? Leo cursed. So, what do we do now? Granny Zilka walked toward the door. We fight. Jake clenched his fists. He still didn't know what was happening, but one thing was clear. This was just the beginning. And something told him things were about to change forever. Suspense ending. As the first enemy ships landed, Jake looked at the half-eaten cookie still in his hand. His mind still buzzed with voices. His body felt different. Stronger. Faster. More aware. Maybe, just maybe, Granny Zilka was right. But was he ready for what came next? The hidden message. The air was thick with tension. Outside the colony, sirens blared, and the sky darkened under the massive enemy ships hovering above. Granny Zilka stood calmly at the door, as if she had expected this all along. Jake Carter wasn't calm. His heart pounded as he clenched his fists. The strange buzzing in his head hadn't stopped since he had taken a bite of that cursed cookie. He could still hear voices, too many voices. Some whispered, some screamed, some spoke in alien languages he didn't understand. But there was something else beneath the noise. A pattern. A message. Jake forced himself to focus. He turned to the others. Everyone, grab your weapons. Now. Knox was already moving, loading his rifle. About damn time. Amelia's hands shook slightly, but she pulled a small laser pistol from her belt. Leo Park, the colony's mechanic, muttered under his breath as he grabbed a wrench. Mira, the quiet one, stood motionless, staring at Granny Zilka. You knew this was coming, didn't you? Mira said, her voice accusing, yet strangely calm. Granny Zilka sighed. Of course, child. That is why I chose you all. Jake stiffened. Chose us? For what? She turned, her glowing eyes meeting his. For survival. The voices in the mind. Before Jake could demand more answers, the sky cracked with fire. Explosions thundered as the enemy ships opened fire on the colony's defenses. Plasma bolts streaked through the air, slamming into the shield barriers surrounding the settlement. Jake grabbed his communicator. Control, report. A panicked voice came through. Shields are holding, but not for long. We need backup. Backup. Jake almost laughed. There was no backup. They were alone on Vex 47, light years away from Earth. The voices in his head grew louder. Then suddenly, a single voice cut through the noise. The key is in the mind. Open the gate. Jake froze. The voice was clear. Real. It was not his own. What the hell? He whispered. The others turned to him. What is it? Amelia asked. Jake looked around. The room felt different now. The air vibrated, as if something unseen was moving through it. Granny Zilka watched him carefully. You heard it, didn't you? She asked. Jake swallowed. Yeah. A voice. It said, open the gate. What does that mean? Granny Zilka nodded. Then it has begun. She stepped forward, placing a hand on Jake's forehead. A sudden rush of images filled his mind. Visions of stars, ancient machines, a massive door hidden beneath the surface of Vex 47. It wasn't just a colony. It was a prison. A prison for something far older and far more dangerous than the invaders outside. The truth about the cookies, Jake gasped, stumbling back. What the hell was that? Granny Zilka folded her hands. The cookies were just the beginning. They were the key to unlocking your potential, to connecting your mind to what lies beneath. Mira stepped forward. What lies beneath? Granny's eyes darkened. Something that should have never been buried. But now, The enemy has come for it, and you are the only ones who can stop them." Knox scoffed. "Oh, great. We're a bunch of cookie-powered warriors now. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." Leo rubbed his temples. "Well, it makes sense why my head feels like a damn supercomputer since I ate one. I can see energy patterns, heat signatures, stuff I shouldn't be able to see." Amelia snapped her fingers. "And I can read complex equations in my head. The math, the physics, it all just makes sense now." Mira closed her eyes. "I can feel the emotions of everyone in the room." She shivered. "And I can feel something waiting below." Jake clenched his jaw. He wasn't just hearing voices. He was hearing something, alive. Something that had been trapped for a very, very long time. And now, the enemy wanted to set it free. The enemy revealed. A deafening boom shook the ground. The colony shields flickered, then failed. Sirens screamed. Jake ran outside, his breath catching at what he saw. Black armored soldiers marched toward the colony gates, weapons glowing with eerie red light. Their helmets were featureless, their movements too perfect, too synchronized. They weren't just soldiers. They were controlled. Leo cursed. "Who the hell are these guys?" Granny Zilka's expression hardened. "They are the harbingers, servants of the ones who locked the ancient power beneath us." Knox raised his rifle. "Great. And let me guess, they don't want us digging up their dirty secrets." "They will kill every last one of you to keep it buried," Granny confirmed. Jake inhaled sharply. "Then we don't let them." The air shifted again. Jake felt something inside him wake up. A power, a connection. He turned to his team. "You all feel it, don't you?" One by one, they nodded. They weren't just humans anymore. They were something more. Suspense ending. The battle begins. The first wave of Hardinger soldiers charged toward the colony. Jake and his team stood their ground, something inside them burning with energy. Granny Zilka whispered, "Now, children, it is time to fight." Jake clenched his fists. His vision flashed, and suddenly he could see the enemy's movements before they happened. Knox's rifle glowed. "Oh, I like this." Leo smirked. "Let's see what these upgrades can do." The first shots rang out. The battle for Vex 47 had begun. The invasion no one expected. The colony was under siege. The air trembled with the sounds of battle, plasma bolts streaking across the sky, explosions rattling the metal structures, and the chilling war cries of the Harbingers, an army unlike anything the humans had ever faced. Jake Carter felt everything. The voices in his mind had grown stronger, more focused. He could hear the thoughts of his team, the screams of frightened colonists, and beneath it all, something darker. A whisper in the back of his mind, a presence stirring beneath the planet's surface. And the Harbingers were coming straight for it. First contact with the enemy. "Take Kyovir," Jake shouted as a blast of red energy tore through a colony building, sending flames and debris into the sky. Knox was already in motion, his body moving faster than humanly possible, diving behind a fallen steel beam and returning fire. The moment he pulled the trigger, his rifle glowed with a strange blue light, and the plasma bolt he fired ripped straight through 3 Harbingers at once. "Whoa," Knox breathed. He hadn't expected that. Amelia was crouched behind a barricade, her mind racing with calculations. "Their armor is absorbing standard shots, but if we target the joints and visors, we can." Before she could finish, one of the Harbingers leaped through the air, aiming straight for her. Jake didn't think. He moved. 1 second he was standing still, the next he was across the battlefield, catching the Harbinger midair and slamming him to the ground with a force that shook the earth. The enemy soldier twitched once, then stopped moving. Jake stared at his own hands. "What the hell?" Granny Zilka's voice echoed in his mind. "You are awakening, Captain Carter. But this is only the beginning. Who are the Harbingers?" Leo, who had been working on a turret near the colony gate, ducked as a barrage of red bolts whizzed past him. Yeah, can we talk about why these guys don't even flinch when they get shot? Mira, who had been eerily silent throughout the battle, suddenly turned toward a fallen harbinger. She knelt beside the lifeless soldier, placed her hands on his helmet, and gasped. Jake ran over. Mira, what is it? Her eyes glowed silver as she peered into the soldier's mind. They're not alive. Leo frowned. What do you mean, not alive? They're moving, shooting, attacking us. Sounds pretty alive to me. Mira shook her head, her hands trembling. No, they're puppets. Their minds aren't their own. Something, or someone, is controlling them. Jake felt a chill crawl up his spine. Who? Mira's glowing eyes snapped upward, staring past the battlefield, past the colony walls, toward the massive Harbinger warship hovering in the sky. Him. The one pulling the strings. Before Jake could ask more, a deep, inhuman voice boomed across the battlefield, cutting through the explosions, the gunfire, even the storm of thoughts in his head. You are unworthy of the gift. The sky darkened. A figure descended from the Harbinger ship, cloaked in shifting shadows, its face obscured beneath a featureless black mask. It didn't walk. It floated a few inches above the ground, its presence distorting reality itself. Every Harbinger soldier on the battlefield froze, then suddenly knelt as the figure approached. Leo whispered, "Yeah, okay, that's terrifying." Jake felt something deep inside him react to the figure's presence, like two forces being drawn toward each other. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure's head tilted slightly. "I am the keeper of the seal, and you are the mistake." Jake's hands clenched into fists. "I don't know what that means, but I'm guessing you're not here for a friendly chat." The keeper extended one shadowy hand, and suddenly, Jake couldn't breathe. An invisible force wrapped around his body, lifting him off the ground. His lungs burned, his vision blurred, and the voices in his mind screamed in pain. "Captain!" Amelia shouted. Knox fired at the keeper, but the plasma bolt stopped midair and disintegrated. The keeper's voice remained cold. "You are not meant to wield this power. It belongs to the Harbingers, to those who understand its true purpose." Jake struggled, his mind racing. He could feel his strength draining, as if the very energy inside him was being ripped away. Then, Granny Zilka stepped forward. "You will release him," she said, her voice filled with quiet power. The keeper's grip tightened for a moment, then suddenly released. Jake dropped to the ground, gasping for air. The keeper turned to Granny Zilka. "Ah, the traitor." Granny Zilka's expression remained unreadable. "I was never one of you, and I will not let you take them." The keeper laughed softly, a sound that made the air itself tremble. "You cannot stop what is coming." The Harbinger soldiers stood up in unison, their weapons glowing brighter. Granny Zilka's eyes flashed. "Then we fight." Suspense ending. The last stand begins. Jake forced himself to his feet, his muscles aching, his mind still buzzing with power. He looked at his team. Knox, gripping his rifle. Amelia, her mind calculating their odds. Leo, tightening his grip on his tools. Mira, her eyes still glowing silver. They weren't the same people they had been yesterday. They were something more now. Jake lifted his weapon, the energy inside him igniting like a wildfire. The Harbingers raised their rifles. The keeper simply watched. Jake took a deep breath. Let's finish this. The truth about Granny Zilka. The battlefield was chaos. Blaster fire streaked through the air, turning the colony into a war zone. The Harbingers moved with terrifying precision, their black armor blending into the night as they stormed the settlement. The human colonists, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with everything they had. But it was clear, this wasn't a fight they could win. Yet, in the heart of the battle, something strange was happening. Jake Carter felt himself changing. Every time he dodged a plasma bolt, it was like he knew where it would land before it was even fired. Every time he struck a harbinger, his blows landed with inhuman strength. His senses were sharper, his reactions faster. The power inside him, awakened by Granny Zilka's cookies, was growing stronger. But he wasn't the only one. Nox fought like a machine, moving with speed that no normal human could match. Amelia's mind worked at an impossible pace, calculating enemy movements before they made them. Leo had taken down a harbinger mech with nothing but his bare hands, as if the metal itself had obeyed his will. And Mira stood still in the middle of the chaos, her silver eyes glowing, her hands raised toward the sky. The air around her shimmered, as if unseen forces were bending to her command. The harbingers that got too close simply collapsed, their bodies twitching before falling completely still. Something ancient was waking inside them, and the Keeper knew it. The Keeper's warning. The battle paused for a moment as the Keeper of the Seal floated forward. His presence warped the air around him, a dark gravity pulling at the very fabric of reality. "You still do not understand," he said, his voice deep and inhumanly calm. "You think you are gaining power, but you are merely unlocking a prison built for your kind." Jake tightened his grip on his weapon. "What are you talking about?" The Keeper tilted his head, studying him. "Your kind, humans, you are not what you believe yourselves to be. You are not conquerors, not explorers. You are the remnants of something that should have been erased long ago." A chill ran through Jake's body. "Explain," Granny Zilka demanded, stepping forward. The Keeper's gaze settled on her. "Ah, the betrayer speaks." Jake turned to her. "What does he mean, Zilka?" She didn't answer. The Keeper chuckled. "She has hidden much from you, Captain Carter. But the time for secrets is over. Let me show you the truth." He raised a hand. The world around them shifted. The memory of the past. The battlefield vanished. Jake stumbled, his mind spinning as he suddenly found himself somewhere else. The sky above was not the sky of Vex 47. It was a burning red, filled with dying stars. Around him stood massive towers of impossible design, floating and shifting as if gravity itself was uncertain. Then he saw them. Humans, but they were not like him. They stood taller, their eyes glowing like molten gold. Their movements were fluid, their minds connected by something unseen. This was not Earth. This was something else. A great war was raging. The golden-eyed humans fought against an enemy unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Shadows wrapped in armor, their very presence warping reality. The Harbingers. At the center of it all stood a woman, ancient, powerful, her presence commanding. Granny Zilka. But she was not old here. She was one of them. Jake gasped as the memory hit him all at once. Granny Zilka was not just some strange old alien. She was one of the last survivors of the first human empire. A civilization so powerful, so advanced, that the galaxy itself had turned against them. And they had lost. Back to reality. Jake snapped back into the present, his breath ragged. He stared at Granny Zilka, his mind racing. "You," he started. "You're not an alien." Granny Zilka's expression was solemn. "No, child. I am not." Mira stepped forward, her silver eyes wide. "Then what are you?" Granny Zilka took a slow breath. "I am the last of the firstborn, the original humans, before Earth, before your kind, before the reset." Nox clenched his fists. "Reset?" The Keeper's voice was amused. "Ah, now they begin to understand." Granny Zilka nodded. "Yes, there was a reset. Your kind were never meant to reach this point again. The war should have ended you. But humanity is stubborn." She turned to Jake, her eyes filled with something between pride and sorrow. "And now here you stand, awakening once more." Jake's pulse pounded. "Why did you hide this from us?" Granny Zilka looked at the Harbinger soldiers surrounding them, at the Keeper's towering figure, and then back at Jake. "Because I knew that the moment you remembered who you really were, they would come for you." The ground trembled. The harbingers rose as one, their weapons humming. The keeper lifted his hand, and the very air itself darkened. "You were given a second chance," the keeper said. "A chance to remain in the dark, to live in ignorance. But now, the cycle will begin again." Jake felt the power inside him surging, memories flashing through his mind, memories that weren't his but belonged to something older, something buried inside his DNA. The firstborn had fallen before, but he refused to fall again. He lifted his weapon. "Then let's break the cycle." The battle was about to begin again, but this time, humanity was ready. Suspense ending. The true war begins. The harbingers moved first. A storm of energy blasts tore through the air, the ground cracking as dark forces ripped through reality itself. Jake and his team charged forward, their newly awakened powers blazing like fire. Granny Zilka whispered one last thing before she joined the fight. "Proof to me that humanity was worth saving." The ancient enemy returns. The battlefield was on fire. The colony of Vex 47, once a thriving outpost, was now a war zone of collapsing buildings, burning wreckage and bodies, both human and harbinger alike. The sky was painted in smoke and plasma fire, and above them, the harbinger mothership loomed like a black sun, watching, waiting. But this was not just a fight for survival anymore. This was a battle against history itself. Jake Carter stood at the center of it all, his breath ragged, his mind racing. The power inside him was growing, but so was the danger. His body felt like it was burning from the inside, his vision flickering between the present and something ancient, something buried deep in his DNA. The firstborn. The original humans, so advanced, so powerful, that the galaxy itself had once feared them. The war they had fought. The betrayal. The reset that had erased them from history. Now, Jake knew the truth. And so did the enemy. The sky cracks open. Above, the harbinger mothership shifted. Its dark surface rippled, as if it were not made of metal, but of living shadow. And then something far worse than the harbingers began to emerge. The sky split open. A rift, a massive swirling void of black and violet energy, began to crack reality itself. Lightning without sound arced through the air, and from within that void came a sound that was neither a scream nor a roar, but something deeper, a presence. The true enemy. Jake's heart froze. He didn't know how he knew, but he did. Something older than the harbingers was waking up, and it was waking up hungry. The keeper's true purpose. The keeper of the seal, the shadow-cloaked being who had nearly killed Jake in the last battle, floated toward the rift. His dark form shimmered as the gravity around him twisted and bent, like he was barely holding his own existence together. "Your ignorance has doomed you," the keeper said, his voice cold. "I did not come here to destroy you, Captain Carter. I came to contain you." Jake's hands clenched into fists. What the hell does that mean? The keeper turned toward him, his mask shifting, revealing glimpses of a face beneath, not alien, but human. "You were never meant to wake up." Jake's stomach twisted. "Your firstborn?" The keeper nodded. "I was once, but I saw the truth before it was too late. We were not meant to exist. We were not meant to have power like this." He gestured toward the rift in the sky, where something vast and unspeakable was beginning to take shape. "We were a mistake, and that mistake is about to be corrected." The harbingers, once thought to be mindless puppets, suddenly stopped fighting. They turned toward the rift and knelt, as if in prayer. Amelia gasped. "Oh my God, they aren't soldiers. They're worshippers," Mira whispered. Leo cursed under his breath. "So what? They're just here to open the door." The keeper's voice was haunted. "They are here to make sure you don't stop it." The horror awakens. The rift widened, and from within, a shadow moved. Not a ship, not a fleet. Something. Alive. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He could feel it. A mind so vast, so old, that it didn't think in ways humans could understand. It had no name, no physical form that could be described. It was not a god. It was a force, a hunger, and it was waking up. The harbingers began to chant. Their voices rose in an alien language that somehow Jake could now understand. The sleeper returns, the eater of stars. The end of the firstborn, the end of all. Granny Zilka's face was grim. I feared this, she said softly. The harbingers were never the real enemy. They were only the key. The real war is about to begin. The last stand. Jake turned to his team. Knox, Amelia, Leo, and Mira. They all looked shaken, but determined. We have to stop it, Jake said. We don't have a choice. Amelia swallowed hard. How? We barely survived against the harbingers, and this thing, whatever it is, makes them look like nothing. Granny Zilka stepped forward. There is a way. They all turned to her. The firstborn were powerful, she continued, but even they could not destroy this creature. They could only seal it away. That is what the harbingers were meant to do, to keep it locked in its prison, to stop humanity from ever waking it again. But they failed. Jake's voice was tight. And now, Granny Zilka's eyes glowed golden. Now we do what the firstborn could not. We end this, forever. The ground shook as the sleeper moved closer, its shadow stretching across the battlefield like a living storm. Mira gasped, clutching her head. I can hear it, she whispered. It's speaking to me, to all of us. Jake turned to her. What is it saying? Mira's eyes filled with tears of terror. It's not speaking. She shuddered. It's laughing. Suspense ending. The final choice. The sky split apart as the sleeper began to emerge, its true form too massive to be comprehended. Jake felt the power inside him surging. It was time. He turned to his team. Whatever happens next, we do this together. Knox smirked. Wouldn't have it any other way. Leo cracked his knuckles. Let's show this thing why humans don't die easy. Amelia took a deep breath. We're rewriting history. Mira's silver eyes burned with light. Then let's make sure it's worth remembering. Granny Zilka placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. Lead them well, Captain Carter, she said, because this is humanity's last stand. Jake looked up at the sleeper, at the force that had ended the firstborn. And he whispered, not this time. The final choice. The battlefield was no longer just a war zone. It was a graveyard in the making. The sleeper, the ancient force that had ended the firstborn civilization, had awakened. It loomed in the sky, a presence so vast and incomprehensible that reality itself seemed to bend around it. Its form wasn't something the human mind could fully grasp. It was neither shadow nor flesh, neither machine nor God. It was pure hunger. And now it had set its gaze on humanity. Jake Carter could feel it. A pressure inside his skull, a weight pressing on his very soul. The sleeper wasn't just a physical being. It was a thought, a concept, a storm of existence that could erase everything it touched. And now, it was reaching into his mind, into all their minds, testing them, breaking them apart. Surrender. The voice wasn't spoken. It simply existed, flowing through the air, inside their heads, inside their blood. Surrender, and I will make your end painless. Jake gritted his teeth. The power inside him, awakened by Granny Zilka's cookies, surged through his veins, fighting back against the sleeper's influence. He wasn't going to surrender. Not now. Not ever. And as long as he was standing, neither would the rest of his team. The last stand begins. Everyone, get ready, Jake shouted, shaking off the sleeper's mental grip. Knox locked his rifle and smirked. Ready? I was born ready. Leo adjusted the mechanical gloves he had built from colony scrap, energy crackling between his fingers. Gotta admit, this is the craziest fight I've ever been in. Amelia's eyes glowed faintly with calculations, her brain moving faster than it ever had before. If we don't stop this thing now, there won't be another chance. Mira, standing in eerie silence, turned her gaze upward. Her silver eyes flickered with something new, something ancient. Granny Zilka stepped beside Jake, her expression unreadable. "You know what must be done," she said quietly. Jake clenched his fists. "Yeah, but I don't like it." Granny's eyes softened. "Neither do I. Because there was only one way to stop the sleeper. And it came with a terrible cost. The Harbinger's betrayal. The Harbinger soldiers, once thought to be mindless warriors, now stood frozen, their glowing red eyes flickering in the presence of their god. The keeper of the seal stepped forward. His dark, shifting form seemed almost insignificant compared to the monstrous force looming above them. And yet, when he spoke, the battlefield fell silent. "You have awoken," the keeper said, his voice carrying both fear and reverence. "We have waited for you. We have served you." The sleeper's presence trembled, like a tide shifting. Then it laughed. Not a sound, not a voice, but a feeling, a shattering of the soul. "You are nothing to me." And in an instant, the Harbingers began to die. Their armor collapsed inward, their bodies vanishing into dust. Their weapons, their ships, their technology. All of it was erased in a single breath. Jake watched in horror. It's killing its own followers. Granny Zilka's face was grim. It does not care about loyalty. It never did. The Harbingers were simply its prison guards. Now that it is free, they are useless to it. The keeper fell to his knees. His once powerful form flickered, fading. "No, this is not how it was meant to be." Jake stepped forward. "You thought serving this thing would save you." The keeper looked up, his eyes filled with something that wasn't hate, but regret. "You do not understand. The firstborn tried to kill it. They failed. The only way to stop it was to lock it away. I thought I was protecting the galaxy." Jake's hands clenched. "Then help us finish what they started." The keeper stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "There is only one way. The final choice." Granny Zilka took a deep breath. "The firstborn built a weapon," she said. "A final failsafe. One that could destroy the sleeper, but only if it had the right power source." Jake knew what was coming. The power they had all been given. The gifts awakened inside them after eating Granny's cookies. It wasn't just random evolution. It wasn't just a side effect. It was fuel. Jake looked at his team. "You're saying, in order to activate this weapon, we have to sacrifice our own power?" Granny Zilka nodded. "Yes, and not just your power, your very existence. The sleeper must be erased from time itself. And you will go with it." Silence. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Leo let out a nervous chuckle. "Well, that sucks." Knox crossed his arms. "We don't really have a choice, do we?" Amelia exhaled slowly. "If we don't do this, there won't be anything left." Mira closed her eyes. "Then let's make it count." Jake looked at them, his friends, his family, the last warriors of humanity. This wasn't fair. They had just learned the truth, just discovered who they really were. And now, they had to give it all up. But that was the thing about humans. They never ran from a fight. They never stopped defying the odds. And if they had to burn bright to destroy the darkness, then so be it. Suspense ending. The countdown begins. Granny Zilka raised her hand, and before them, a massive structure emerged from the ground. A weapon built by the firstborn, hidden beneath the colony all along. The sleeper roared, sensing what was about to happen. It lashed out, sending reality-warping tendrils of pure void toward them. Jake took a deep breath. "Everyone, hold the line." Knox fired his rifle, blue energy cutting through the darkness. Leo raised his hands, summoning shields from raw energy. Amelia calculated the perfect trajectory for the final strike. Mira let out a breath. And for the first time, she smiled. The battle wasn't over. Not yet. Jake turned toward the ancient weapon, knowing that once he activated it, there was no turning back. This was the final choice, and he had already made it. Let's end this. The battle that changed everything. The ground trembled beneath them. The ancient weapon, a massive planet-forged construct buried deep beneath Vex 47, had begun to rise. Cracks split open the battlefield, revealing a vast metallic structure pulsating with golden energy. The Firstborn had built this weapon ages ago to stop the Sleeper, but they had failed. Now it was up to Jake Carter and his team to finish what the Firstborn could not. Above them, the Sleeper roared, its very presence bending reality itself. It was neither flesh nor machine, neither god nor creature. It was entropy made manifest, the hunger that had once devoured the Firstborn Empire. And now it had turned its attention to humanity. You cannot win. The Sleeper's voice wasn't a sound, it was a thought, a whisper inside their bones. It didn't command. It simply knew. You will fade, as all before you have faded. Jake gritted his teeth. Yeah. Then let's make it a hell of a fight. The final battle had begun. Holding the line. Key EP firing. Knox bellowed, his rifle glowing as he let loose a storm of plasma fire. The Sleeper's tendrils of living darkness slashed through the air, warping the ground itself. Leo's energy constructs crackled as he redirected enemy fire, his gloves humming with power. This thing is trying to erase us from existence. Amelia crouched behind cover, her enhanced mind calculating every possible outcome. We have 3 minutes before the weapon fully activates. Mira stood at the center of it all, her silver eyes shining, as she fought the Sleeper's grip on their minds. It's trying to break us, she whispered. It's showing me futures where we fail. Jake stepped beside her. Then don't listen. Make our own future. A deep boom shook the battlefield as the Sleeper fully emerged from the rift above them. It was indescribable. A swirling mass of void, shifting and pulsing, constantly changing between shapes that shouldn't exist. Looking at it was like trying to understand infinity itself. Knox cursed. How the hell do we fight something that isn't even real? Granny Zilka stepped forward, her golden eyes blazing. We don't fight it, she said softly. We rewrite it. She raised her hands, and the Firstborn weapon awakened. The final sacrifice. The weapon hummed to life, ancient mechanisms shifting as massive pillars of light shot into the sky. The Sleeper let out a scream of rage, realizing what was happening. You would erase me. The ground shattered as the Sleeper unleashed its full power. Darkness spread, a black hole of pure oblivion swallowing everything in its path. Buildings crumbled. The sky cracked. The stars themselves flickered. Jake felt his body burning. The power inside him, the power given by Granny Zilka's cookies, was being pulled toward the weapon. This was the cost. The Firstborn had built this weapon, but it needed a power source strong enough to rewrite reality itself. Them. Jake met Granny Zilka's eyes. She already knew. She had always known. This is the only way, she said softly. Jake turned to his team. We don't have to do this, he said. Knox grinned. Yeah, we do. Leo smirked. I was never planning to get old anyway. Amelia took a breath. For humanity. Mira looked at Jake, her silver eyes full of emotion. We'd make our own future. Jake turned back to the weapon. And he made his choice. Rewriting reality. The moment they let go, their power flooded into the weapon. The Sleeper let out a sound that was not a scream, not a roar, but pure terror. No, this cannot be. Light exploded from the planet's core, wrapping around the Sleeper like a cage. The tendrils of darkness recoiled, the black hole reversed, and for the first time in its endless existence, The sleeper felt fear. The humans were not just resisting. They were erasing it from time itself. The sleeper's shape twisted, flickering between forms. It lashed out, trying to grab hold of something, anything, to hold on to existence. But the firstborn weapon had already decided. You should not have awakened. The sleeper vanished, erased, undone. And then, so did Jake. The aftermath. Silence. The battlefield was gone. Vex 47 was whole again. The sky was clear, the colony untouched. The war had never happened. The sleeper had never been awakened. And Jake Carter was gone. Knox, Leo, Amelia, Mira, Granny Zilka, all of them had disappeared. And yet, humanity remained, a future unknown. Years later, on a distant world, a new generation of explorers landed on a mysterious planet, a planet once called Vex 47. As they stepped onto the surface, one of them, a young pilot, paused. I feel like I've been here before, she whispered. Her companion chuckled. Impossible. No one's ever been to this system before. But deep in her mind, in a place she couldn't reach, a name surfaced. A name she had never heard. And yet, somehow, she had always known it. Jake Carter. The wind whispered. The stars burned bright. And somewhere, beyond time, they remembered. The humans who had once saved the universe. The ones who had chosen to fight, even when they knew they would be forgotten. The ones who had won.